so kind of continuing on
Yeah.
your career trajectory here on the Cape. So this then ties into how I met you, because
Right.
I met you at one of your game nights.
Oh,
So,
right.
okay, so tell us about what I'm
Sure.
referring to.
So I was really fortunate that in 2008, I met a guy who turned out to be my future business partner because my wife and I are big into Mac and Apple products, and our
Mhm,
office was full of Mac, and we didn't know a lot of people on the Cape who could help us troubleshoot them and fix them.
mhm,
And through a friend of a friend, we got introduced to a guy named Dave Kalo, who really did know what he was doing, thank goodness, because we didn't know a lot of people.
mhm,
And he helped us come and network some of our Macs and get our computers to really work in the way that we could have a functioning business the way we wanted to be efficient.
mhm,
And then it turned out that Dave loved playing some role playing games, especially Dungeons and Dragons, which I was a huge fan of. And I learned how to play at summer camp. And yes, I'll tell you how old I was. I was,
mhm,
oh Lord, I guess I was 7 or 8, and that was 1980. So that'll tell you I'm not
mhm.
27 anymore.
Yeah, you
But I
gave it
learned how to
away.
play D&D at summer camp, and
Mhm,
I went to summer
mhm,
camp for a long time. And
mhm,
I wanted to bring D&D back to our camp, to Camp WK, because it never
mhm,
really had it. And Dave said, well, I have a job, but on some Saturdays, if I have a couple hours, I'll come and we'll run some D&D.
mhm,
And so we did that for a few years, and Dave's reputation, he became D&D Dave. All the kids knew him. They looked forward to it. There was a
mhm.
bunch of kids who were like really into it, and I was glad to know that D&D itself had a bit of a renaissance starting in 2014-15 when they updated to what's called 5th edition.
Mhm.
So flash forward, Dave and I um, were talking, and we were also playing some D&D, even when it wasn't camp, just nice friends playing some
Mhm,
role-playing games, having a good time.
mhm,
And we had a we sort of we realized that there was this concept called a board game cafe, which you probably know about.
mhm,
They're in a lot of places, not happen to not be on the Cape yet. And so there was a pitch contest at Cape Cod Beer that CCYP
mhm,
was doing.
mhm,
And we didn't, this was April of 2018, and we didn't, E for All had not existed, at least in our consciousness yet. And we went to this thing, and
mhm.
we just got up there and made fools out of ourselves, but only in the sense that, like, we knew we had a way of connecting people without screens.
Mm,
So the gist of it was, let's get kids off their screens and let's get them talking to each other and learning from each other through games so that we could build more authentic human beings. There it
mm,
is.
mm.
And then a couple months later, E for All sort of popped its head out of the groundhog hole and said, here we are, we're having a pitch contest. We went to that pitch contest, and this is how I met you, Haley.
Mhm,
At the pitch contest, Jen Villa, excuse me. Oh, I probably ruined that name. My apologies, Jen. I think it's Jen. From the West End.
mhm,
She was one of the judges, and we did our pitch, and she thought about this idea. She said, after the pitch, she came up to us, Haley, and she said, well, this was in late August. She said, we're heading into the sort of off season here on the Cape.
mhm,
She said, Tuesdays and Wednesdays during the fall, like, I would really like to figure out a way to get some more customers to come to my restaurant.
mm,
And so here, Dave and I, like, we want to open up a board game cafe. Everybody get off your phones. And then all of a sudden, what happened is we turned into a pop-up sort of restaurant enhancement service. But
mm.
that's not even a good way to describe it. But anyway, we
Pop-up
started
is
running
good,
these.
yeah, pop-up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just sort of a way to help drive some revenue into a restaurant at a time of year where they could use some more,
Mhm,
and using a format where, as we came to find out through the E for All program, when we measured it, our average length of stay at somebody who came to what became Reboot Game Lab, a game night, their average stay was 90 minutes. And
mhm,
in 90 minutes, you can eat a lot of food and drink a lot of drinks, and those things cost money. So
mhm,
so the idea being, like, this was an experience, right, that
mhm.
also got people to not do this, or at least to share it, right? We wanted that, but we
Right,
didn't. Then
yeah.
we wanted them to put the phone down.
Yeah.
So that's how we ended up at the West End, and you were
Mhm,
kind enough to hear about it and try it. And
mhm,
we ended up doing Guapos in Orleans. We ended up
mhm.
working for a while during the daytime hours on the weekends at the Cape Cod Coffee in Mashpee Commons before they
Yeah.
moved into a bigger place. Um, but I said way enough. Did that make When you first heard about the idea, did it make any sense to you?
Oh my gosh. So why I was so interested in it and why I ultimately came to love all those game nights I went to, it was because like, I think I'm the kind of person I'm not into like going out to a bar and
Mm,
drinking and like that kind of social scene. And
right.
also like just a typical networking event can get really dry and boring after
Yeah,
a few, So
sure.
this
The
was
first couple are okay, but then it's
right.
like, oh, this is the
Yeah.
same thing.
Yeah, same thing, exactly. So this was just a new way to socialize, maybe network, but really just to get out and meet new people and have a fun experience, do something really interactive as well.
Yeah, and you know, all of those things I'm glad rang true for you.
Mhm.
And we also discovered that we could do things for kids too. So kind of like back
Mm,
to our roots where we started a camp running D&D for kids,
yeah.
we also ended up running D&D groups for kids on the weekends in Mashpee, in addition to doing some nighttime events. So I was lucky that Dave and I we were accepted into E for All in the fall of 2018. And again, we were two guys that were, let's just say, in their 40s, that had spouses and children and mortgages. And like, we were trying to figure out, could we make this into a full-time thing? Um, and since we weren't 25, like, we couldn't just like sell our houses and, well, I guess we
Right.
could have, but we chose not to.
Right.
um, to try to make this work. So that's how I learned about E for All. And I will say, we E for All is part of a network, Haley, as you
Mm,
probably know. E for All
mhm,
started in Lowell Lawrence. They have programs now on the South Coast. They have programs out in Western Mass,
mm,
in Roxbury. They just launched in Worcester, and
mm,
it really is growing. Um,
mm,
and it was great to see CCYP and E for All do some work together through a grant through the state
mm,
of Massachusetts. Because again, like we talked about earlier, the more organizations are willing to work across the Cape, sort of
mm,
broader, and we were working from Mashpee to Hyannis to Orleans. We even did some game nights out in Wellfleet, which was super fun. Um,
mm,
you kind of realize like this is a region full of people who will try things,
mm,
and who will
yeah,
listen, and whether they're sustainable or not, you have to figure that out.
right.
um, and organizations like CapeSpace, like E for All, and yeah, like E Forever, but CCYP, those are and the chambers too, they do
Mhm,
see that it's helpful to be able to share and spread ideas beyond each town, and that was what E
mm.
for All really gave us a chance to do.
Mhm. That's awesome. Yeah. 100% agree. So Will, so this is all kind of leading up to my next question. So because you've had such experience both, starting and owning businesses, and you've also just had a wealth of experience being in leadership positions, I could probably talk to you for hours about your
Oh
pre-Cape
no, let's
Cod
not. Nobody
career
wants.
history.
Oh please, you're kind to
But
say, but yeah.
but yeah, so you've had all this experience in both of these kind of arenas. What have
Uh-huh.
you found to be kind of the key to being successful, whatever it is that you've done in your career?
Well, so I think it ties into a little bit about what I said before, but specifically what I've learned about Cape Cod. And I don't know who gets the credit for this, so I will give them credit when someone tells me. But until then, somebody once said, I don't know who that somebody is, that Cape Cod is, it's 40 miles long and it's 4 inches deep. And to me, like, I heard that when we first moved here in 2004. And I was a little skeptical, number one. Number two, we were really busy because we had an infant and a business to run. But also, like, I didn't understand it. I was hoping it was true. And now here I am 17 years later. So, Haley, we really didn't know anybody when we moved here. We knew the owners that we bought the camp from. We knew some of the staff that we had learned and grown with through the first summer we were here. But, but because Cape Cod, it turns out, is actually 40 miles long and 4 inches deep. In addition to that, what I think that means, Haley, is that there are folks that are willing to help. They're certainly willing to listen and they're willing to talk. The question is, are you willing to reach out? And number two, are you willing to respond when someone reaches out to you? So we just started meeting people. Well, because we had to hire people, we had to spend money like on food and equipment and things like that. And we wanted to keep that money here on the Cape, right? Or at least in Massachusetts.
Mhm.
And then because we had children, and it's not a requirement, but when you have children, you end up meeting people, right? Through
Right, yeah.
school, through after school, through, in our case, gymnastics or ballet or dance. We have two girls.
Mhm.
That's just what they chose to do. And even hockey. We had one of our daughters tried ice hockey. So you never know where you're going to meet people.
Yeah.
But I want to emphasize, Haley, and I hope you have a different perspective. So I'm glad we're having this talk about
Mhm.
it. That it the pride that you feel for the town that you live in is
Mm.
totally real and totally legitimate, just
Absolutely.
like wherever you grew up,
Mhm.
right?
Mm.
But I do feel that there are just so many wonderful people who may or may not have grown up here, Haley, who do
Mhm.
see this as a region, and that we cannot lift the region if we don't work together.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
so I guess I would say my one of my favorite TV shows of all time was Lost. I don't know if you
Mhm.
like that show,
I never got into it,
but you kind
but
of know what the,
yeah.
the
I
basic
know the
premise is.
basic premise, yeah.
The plane crashes,
Mhm.
the people land, they're there, they have to figure out what to do.
Mhm.
They discover there's another group of people who are already on the island. I'm not
Mhm.
spoiling anything. Maybe I just did a little, but not
Oh,
too
no.
much. You
It's
can
so
still
convoluted though, isn't it? So you're probably
it
not
gets
spoiling anything.
convoluted, but
Yeah.
at its core,
Yeah.
the message of the show Lost is very simple. It's
Mhm.
this: you either live together
Mhm.
or you die alone.
Mhm.
And I know that's a little harsh and a little extreme,
Mhm.
but when you extrapolate that to what life is like here on the Cape, is we do we kind of don't have anybody else
Mhm.
on a
Mm.
full-time year-round basis, Haley, except for ourselves.
Yeah.
And so if
Mm.
we choose to stay in these silos, right, which I know is another terrible cliche, but it's one that
Mhm.
works, and we can't get out of our silos to try to help each other and try to live together and benefit each other, and let's throw a pandemic on top of it,
Mm.
then we're going to make it harder for ourselves to continue to provide the kind of life that you remember when you were 6 and 10 and 14,
Mm.
which I'm assuming was pretty positive.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. It was, like in the summer, beach every weekend,
Right.
just going out and exploring and yeah.
And yes, okay, I'm
Mhm.
assuming when you were a kid, like you felt the change after Labor Day or Columbus Day, certainly Thanksgiving, like things
Yep.
kind of, you know, and that's less true now, but it's still
Mhm.
kind of true. And
Mhm.
like there, you know, whether you live here for a month a year, a week a
Mhm.
year, or 365 days a year, you do care, right? About the place.
Right.
So that's why I've been fascinated, and I appreciate you asking the question. That like there are so many good organizations. I've already listed a few. If folks would just forget about the organization, Haley, it's
Mhm.
more of a mindset.
Yeah.
I
Mm.
think it's okay to care first about what's right in front of you. But
Mhm.
if you never remove that filter of Barnstable, Mashpee, Marston's Mills, Eastham, Wellfleet, Truro, if you never remove that filter,
Mhm.
it's not as wonderful. It's not as
Right.
helpful as if you did.
For sure.
I hope
Mm.
did that answer make any sense?
No, it absolutely did, and it's tying ball back into what we've been talking about this whole time about
Right.
working together and, talking about organizations
Mhm.
like CCYP and E for All and now E Forever. I think there's that common thread of, we're all in this together, and there are people there to
And
help.
let's be yeah, and I want to be clear. Like I understand that you still have to make money and you still
Yep.
have to
Mhm.
pay your bills and you still
Mhm.
have to keep your lights on. Nobody
Mhm.
is saying that you should do something for nothing and give it all away, or nobody is saying that.
Mhm. Right.
But institutions are not going to be as healthy if you only look out for yourself. And
Absolutely.
you can still charge money to do things like we're doing here with our pod squad. I
Mhm.
mean, we're not doing it for free, but at the
Mhm.
same time,
Yeah.
we also feel like we're offering a service that is of value given what's happened in our country the last 7 months.
Mhm.
And at the same time, someone like a CapeSpace is saying, look, we realize there are lots of people who are here and either here longer, right?
Mhm.
Or
Right.
they're here unexpectedly and they have a need for some services, and that's okay.
Absolutely, yeah.
And
No, for sure.
they expect to pay for it, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's another part, and maybe as you keep talking to some amazing people, and you've already talked to a bunch in this series, that it'd be interesting to hear their perspective on that balance between collaborating and
Mhm.
still making sure that like business is getting done.
Right, yeah. I know, it really is, it's the ultimate balance. Yeah, but you can have a win-win
Yeah.
situation, it's possible, yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean that every collaboration is perfect, and
Right.
but it's the idea and the mindset, Haley,
Mhm.
behind, well, maybe if we have a kitchen that isn't going to be used this summer and the Cape Cod Family Pantry needs a kitchen to produce food,
Mhm.
and they have a
Right.
ton of, literally a ton, Haley, of food
Mhm.
coming from the Boston Greater Boston Food Bank every 2 weeks, but they
Mm.
have no place to produce the meals and take whole chickens and turn them into chicken marsala.
Mhm.
Well, that's how you collaborate. And I will
Right.
say, thanks to another organization that does have this broad view, the Cape Cod Foundation, they had some
Mhm.
emergency COVID grant money, and
Mhm.
that's actually, I should have said this earlier. That's how
Mm.
this all happened. Is the money from the Cape Cod Foundation, Haley,
Mhm.
was used, was granted to the family pantry so that they could help defray the costs of us having to pay our staff because we couldn't do
Mm.
it for nothing. And
Mhm.
I think there were a couple of food vendors, I want to say Guaranteed Fresh and Ring Brothers. They
Mhm.
provided the refrigerated trucks to then transport all
Mhm.
this refrigerated food to get into,
Mhm.
to get to people. So it's one small example, but it's all about like thinking outside yourself a little bit.
Yeah.
And still, testing it, making sure it works, not doing it for nothing, and not giving everything away. But
Mhm.
hopefully, you get a better community on the other side.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, it all comes back to creating that sense of community, for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Well, back to Reboot real quick. I'd be remiss if I
Sure,
didn't mention you guys. So you guys are still doing the D&D for kids, right?
we are. So
Yeah.
thanks. My business. So after Reboot launched, because I was also running camp, I was fortunate that I got to spend almost 11 months working for Big Brothers Big Sisters
Mhm.
of the Cape and Islands, and Dave was, who still works at Capabilities and is an amazing person himself.
Mhm.
He and I had started these groups, these D&D groups for kids, and Dave was able to keep them going in person at the Osterville Library and I think the Harwich Community Center
Mhm.
until COVID started, and then Dave moved them all online. And look,
Mhm.
I told you this a while ago. Dave and I wanted to be in person without screens, and now look at us, right?
Right, yeah.
But the point is, right? You
Uh-huh.
can still have authentic connections, even like I hope we're coming across as authentic friends because we're friends.
Yes.
But like to Dave's credit, he was able to maintain online D&D groups, and they're
Mhm.
still going. And he
Mm.
is doing an amazing job. Unfortunately, I'm not able to provide that kind of
Mhm.
support right now, and so Reboot's future is a little bit up in the air, but I would
Mhm.
say at its core, trying to connect kids and young adults through games,
Mhm.
hopefully soon without the screens, but for
Right.
right now with
Yeah.
the screens,
Mhm.
it's still something that does a lot of good. And Dave is
Yeah.
working with a group of kids who are 7, 8, 9. I think he has a group that's 10, 11, and 12, and then he has a group of high schoolers too. So
Mhm. Oh, nice.
and look, let's just say this: thanks to the pandemic, Haley,
Mhm.
Dave has gotten some customers from Los Angeles, and I think even the
Hmm.
United Kingdom and all around the
Wow.
country that we couldn't get if we were in Mashpee Commons.
Right, yeah.
So, so we are fortunate, and Dave, again, to his credit, has taken that idea and is really doing an amazing job with it.
Mhm. Oh, that's awesome. Hi, Dave, if you're watching this. Miss you.
What's up, Dave? And we
Uh-huh.
still try to play every once in a while ourselves
Mhm.
on a screen, some D&D or some other things. So,
Mhm.
while Reboot itself is not going to turn into what we thought 2 years ago when we met Haley,
Mhm.
I still feel like the kernel of the idea, and certainly the opportunity through E for All to take an
Mm.
idea with two 40-year-old dudes who are like, let's do this, whether you're
Mhm.
40 or 20, that's pretty exciting to have right here on the Cape,
Oh
to
my
have
gosh,
that
yeah.
vehicle to
100%.
launch something. And Kristen and Amanda very well. I
Mm.
mean, there's over 50 graduates already
Yeah.
here on the Cape for E for All.
I know, that's incredible in and of itself, yeah.
Yeah,
Mm. So, exciting things to come in the future, I think,
very
for
much.
small businesses on the Cape, for sure.
Very much. Yeah, there's lots of resources out
Mhm.
there. And, we haven't even mentioned SCORE. I mean, there's just, they're
Oh,
out
yeah?
there. They're out there.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, transitioning a little, you ready for a little, like, rapid fire
Oh, I'm sure our
Q&A? And
audience is ready for rapid
yes.
fire because they've heard enough of me. So I will go quickly. Yes,
Okay.
ready.
So, Will, what's you and your family's favorite spot on the Cape?
Well, I mean,
Mhm.
I have to start with ice cream. So I would say the ice
Okay.
cream smuggler.
Mhm.
Um, Corporation Beach when
Mhm.
there's not a lot of people there for the dogs at low tide.
Uh,
And
yeah.
a place I really need to go more, but I can't and I
Mhm.
should, is the Beachcomber. Oh, the
Mhm.
Beachcomber.
I've
I want
never
to.
been up to the Beachcomber.
Oh, it's like literally the end of the world. Like
Uh-huh.
you're just literally imagine a
Right.
restaurant that's on a bluff and all you see is the
Uh-huh.
Atlantic Ocean. And in
Oh my
general,
gosh,
I need
yeah.
to go to P-Town more, but those are my favorite places.
Oh, yeah, I know, yeah. I'm up there. I gotta get back to P-Town someday.
Yeah.
What are you currently binge watching and or reading?
Okay, so
Mhm.
I just finished the Ted Lasso series, which is on Apple. I think it's on Apple TV.
Mhm.
It's about an American college football coach who
Mhm.
gets hired to coach a soccer team in England,
Oh, that's the Jason
and
Sudeikis
he's
one.
hired
Okay.
Jason Sudeikis, yeah.
Yeah,
And I will
okay.
say this: I'm a huge soccer nerd.
Mhm.
Liverpool Football Club for life. Okay, you'll never walk alone. All that stuff.
Uh-huh.
But even if you don't care about soccer, as they call it in America, or football, as they call it in England, it is sweet and very, very funny. Um,
Mhm.
Obviously, from a reading perspective, I tend to read some D&D books, but I'll mention two quick nonfiction since we're heading into the winter and they like to
Mhm.
curl up with a big old long book. Two books. One's called The Power Broker by Robert Caro, which
Mhm.
is a biography of Robert Moses, who basically built most of New York City and
Mhm. Mm.
infrastructure of New York City. It's fascinating. And the
Mm.
other one is a book called What It Takes, which is it's six mini biographies from the 1988 presidential campaign, which sounds a little nuts, but it's an amazing book by Richard Ben Kramer, and
Mhm.
it
Mm.
analyzes Bush, Dole, Gephardt, and Biden, who ran in
Ooh.
1988,
Oh, yeah, I
um,
forgot that, yeah.
and also Dukakis and
Mhm.
Gary Hart, and it is
Mm.
out of this world. Okay, I'm saying
Yeah.
too much.
No, that's all good. No, and that's quite a relevant, timely book to read
Well,
nowadays,
yeah,
especially
I
too.
read it in college as a politics minor, and I just thought, well, I'd like to go back in the time machine a little bit, back when there was no internet in 1988,
Right.
what it was like to run a political campaign. So
Yeah, oh my goodness, yeah. Good stuff. So is D&D, is that your favorite game of all time? What would you say is your favorite game to
that's a good
play?
question. I would
Yeah.
say it's my favorite role playing game, right? So
Mhm.
a game where you're playing another character and rolling
Mhm.
dice and telling a story. Very fundamentally,
Mhm.
I like the New York Times. I got it right here. New York Times crossword.
Mhm.
Not because I'm good at it, but because
Mhm.
it forces my brain to the
Mhm.
neurons. I think they are. They have to bang into each other when I read the clues.
Well,
So I
that's
do
good,
the.
that's good.
I don't know if you're a crossword person, but it does. It's helpful.
Mhm. I don't have the patience for it,
Well,
unfortunately.
I didn't say I was patient, but I. So I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
The other game I really do like.
Mhm.
I think we've even played before. It's a
Mhm.
series of games called Betrayal. So
Yeah, I think we
betray-
have. Yep.
we played
Mhm.
we played Baldur's Gate, which was D and
Oh,
D.
yeah.
But so there's Betrayal at the House on the Hill. This is how it
Mhm.
started. Then they actually, so Haley, since we've last spoke, they released a Betrayal Scooby Doo in the Haunted Mansion.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, so here it is, really
That
simple.
already sounds
It's a
awesome.
game where two or three people explore like a haunted house in this case, or a haunted mansion in Scooby Doo's case. You
Mhm.
each play a different character, and as you reveal each room and you place a different room tile down, different things happen, and then eventually there's a haunt, and
Mhm.
the game literally changes, and you don't know when. In the middle of the game changes from a cooperative game where you're trying to, get stuff and hurt the bad guys.
Mhm.
It changes into a kill or be killed.
Yeah, I mean,
It
yeah,
changes
that's basically,
literally,
yeah.
and it's too much, so much fun.
Mhm. Yeah, no, that was fun. I never used to play games like that before, so that was fun to do something new and a little
Yeah,
more imaginative. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Will, do you have a hidden talent or maybe something that would surprise people that you do
I
or
would say, other than having random trivia from the 1970s and 80s
Uh-huh.
and 90s in my head, um, I don't have a lot of talents, but I will say, I guess
No.
it's dumb luck, but I was called as a contestant on The Price is Right
Oh
in
my
19
gosh.
in 1995, back in the day.
Uh-huh.
Somewhere on the internets there is a video, um, and Rod Roddy, may he rest in peace.
Mhm.
Bob Barker, may he rest in peace. I think so.
I think
Um,
so, yeah.
Rod Roddy called my name, and that's like, oof, that hits me right in
Yeah.
the feels.
Oh
And
my
I did
gosh.
lose by $1 because those other Prices Right rules, but I
Oh
had
my
a
gosh.
great time.
So that's an epic story.
And clearly I don't have any skills, or else I would have said that I had skills.
No, you do, you do. And Will, lastly, when this
Yep.
airs, I think we're gonna be in the thick of the holiday season here. So what's the
Uh-oh.
best gift you've ever gotten?
Oh, geez.
Mhm.
I mean, I like stuff, so I really do. So it's hard to pinpoint one gift. Oh gosh. I mean, it annoyed some people, but I liked it. I'm from Baltimore, like I said. I got a
Mhm.
Ravens like a sport coat that had like purple. It was purple and had like the Ravens
Mhm.
logo all over it. And last year when they were playing very well, I wore it a lot and it annoyed people, but I just thought it was funny. But
No, I mean, look, the Ravens are good. Like I'm a big football fan, so yeah. I mean, that's the if you're and you obviously you're still a big Ravens fan, so
yeah, I mean,
that's a great
and it
gift.
just turns out I
Mhm.
am. I mean, that is one of the things. So Haley, if you move to Baltimore tomorrow, it's not
Mhm.
like you would just become a Ravens fan,
Right.
would
Yeah.
you? No,
No.
exactly. We
Right.
used to
I
have
mean.
neighbor Haley. We had a neighbor in Baltimore. The husband was from Leominster. The wife was from Billerica. They had a dog named Fenway. Okay, and they lived literally next to us downtown in the Inner Harbor. So
Mhm.
what are you gonna
Yeah.
do?
I
So
know. Yeah.
uh, it's all fun and games.
Absolutely. Okay, Will, before I let you go, if people want to connect with you or learn more about E4Ever or anything else you talked about here, how can they connect with you?
Sure. Thanks for asking. We have a funky email address, but I'm just gonna tell you what it is.
Okay.
Is that
And
okay?
yeah, and if you're watching this on YouTube, I'll put this down in the description
Oh,
below.
well, thank you. I mean, it's my name, so it's W Rubenstein, and I'm not gonna spell it for you because that's annoying. But it's W Rubenstein at E4Ever with the number four in the middle. So it's E number
Mhm.
four ever.org.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm on the LinkedIn and there's an Instagram, and
Mhm.
um, it would be great to connect with folks. And again, one thing I should mention, Haley, you probably do this all the time,
Mhm.
is even if people talk to you, sometimes you realize like talking to them is helpful because you refer them to someone else.
Oh yeah,
So
absolutely.
it's not so when people come to talk to you about CapeSpace, you're not just like, oh, gotta sign them up, gotta sign them up. It's
Right.
listening to what their challenges are and then figuring out where is the right resource. So
Absolutely.
isn't that fun? That's part of what's fun about our jobs is that
Oh yeah.
get to talk to a bazillion different people. And yes,
Mm.
if E Forever makes sense, then great. But maybe E for All does. Maybe CapeSpace does.
Mm.
Maybe it's We Can. Who knows?
Mm. Yeah.
Um, and I would hope that when people do watch this, and hopefully they've made it to the end and haven't, you know, gotten sick, um, that they'll realize that like just because you talk to somebody, it just means you're talking to somebody, you know.
Mhm.
And
Right, yeah.
and again, it's somebody who has a like you said a mindset about wanting to be helpful. That's where it all begins. So
Absolutely.
I'm really grateful. I know that we've talked for a long time,
No.
but part of the problem is when you have friends and they start talking, then
Well, no, this has been wonderful though. This has been a real delight for me, and I hope it's been for all of you watching. I think, Will, you're an awesome guy, and I
thank
think
you.
you've shared a lot of great perspective for us today. So,
Thanks. And like I said, this is a great place we live. And
mm,
if you have the right mindset, there are people out there that are ready to listen. And hopefully you'll listen when they ask you.
mm, absolutely. Well, Will, thank you so much. This really has been a treat.
Thank you, Haley. I got to spend some of my birthday with you. That was cool. And
I
thanks
know, yeah.
everybody for putting up with my background. So Haley, with your permission, I'm gonna end with
Yeah.
the classic.
Yes.
I'm gonna end with the
Yes.
classic.
This is how to
Got
end it.
got so caught up in our conversation I forgot to
I know I was waiting for it the whole time.
Thank you, Internet. Thank you.
Yes. Oh my
Thank you.
gosh.
When you Google birthday Zoom backgrounds, this comes up. I
Oh
don't
my
know
god.
why.
That's so random, but I
But
love
thank
it.
you, nice person who made this.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Thank you for
Love
putting
it.
up with me, nice viewers. And
Yes.
thank you, Haley, for creating some really cool ways for people to get connected and stay connected during
Mhm.
COVID 19.
Absolutely. Yes. No, my treat. My background's in journalism, and I saw that you have a degree in journalism too.
In a
So
former life,
yeah.
yes. I was the
Yeah.
editor of
So
the Ithaca College newspaper, and it was
yeah.
a ton of fun. And,
Mhm.
if we haven't lost every viewer by now, we're about to. No, I'm kidding. But we should talk about we should talk about that because it's a
For sure.
fascinating business, certainly in these days.
Mm.
It is
Hmm.
too.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. It's been my pleasure.
Yeah.
So thank you all for watching. Again, I'm Haley Cote. I am the community manager for CapeSpace Mashpee. And yeah, thank you all for watching. Take care.